You say you wanna make it happen.
Hey everyone, welcome back to So Renew Fashion. Today I'm going to explain how to print and use digital PDF sewing patterns. Now, this is because I myself, as well as other pattern makers and sewers, use PDF sewing patterns online to sell their patterns and distribute their patterns because it's an easy way to get it, globally to anyone. You don't need to buy it in person or ship anything. And it is a really easy and useful way to get sewing patterns, especially from non pattern making companies like individuals like myself. I wanted to explain this so that beginners can get into sewing easier and they have a video on explaining how to use these patterns. So let's get into it. So I'm just opening the pattern that I want to print here, and the first few pages are going to have information. So I always put that you should stop and print out a test page first. This is because you want to make sure it's scaled correctly and you have the right proportion so that your pattern will not print out and be not proportionally the right size, because this will mess up your pattern. So you can print out this page or the first page of the pattern because I've also put a scale square there as well. But I'm going to just go and press print and look at the details. So some key things is I don't want the first 3 pages just because I don't need them. So I'm going to start at page 4, the first page of my pattern, and then go to the end. I also do not want to print in color, and my patterns are made so that you do not need to print in color. I want to make sure it is not double-sided because that would not work for putting the pages together. This is for a US letter size and in portrait mode. Now, the most important thing is you want to check the scale. You want this to be 100% scale, and mine always autocorrects to 108. I don't know why, but make sure it's 100%. That is the most important part. So once you have your pattern printed out, you're going to want to check that it is correctly to scale. Now, I would recommend you do this with the first page only before you print out the whole pattern. But you just want to check that this is 1 inch and this is 4 centimeters. You want to make sure before you start cutting out everything and making your garment that it is the correct scale, because say if it's larger or smaller, then your pattern is going to be larger or smaller, and that's going to cause it to be a different size and proportion than what it is meant to for your size. So what I like to do when I first get this is you want to notice that there is a border all the way around the pattern. This is to make sure you can line up all the pieces of paper correctly. And it is not just the edge of the paper, because there is margins when you print, so you can't print it all the way to the edge. So what you do, you can fold, or I prefer cutting. So I like to cut one of the edges along the straight line like this. And you can cut or fold this because you want to line it up like this to tape the pieces together. And see, I have a diamond here, and this is a half circle, but it will become a full circle once I have all the pieces. But these basically help with lining it up, because I find I struggle to get it perfectly lined up, and then I'll have my pieces slowly start getting off center. So I like patterns that have these to help you line them up properly, because without them, it is very easy to start lining up your pattern improperly. In the first few pieces of paper that you put together, you won't really notice, but with bigger patterns like pants, you will really start to notice it once you get a couple rows down, because if these patterns are pushed out like this, it just gets worse and worse as you go down. So you want to try to line it up very carefully. So I'm just going to do the first one. So I just tape the pieces together, and I personally don't do the entire page just because I feel like that's a waste of tape. You can get away with leaving some gaps, especially pieces where the pattern stops. So this is the top of my pattern. I'm just not going to tape up here just because I don't need to, and I'm trying to save the amount of tape that I need. So a more efficient way to do this is I like to cut all these sides off, and you're going to need to do the sides and the top for this, all the next rows. And I do this before I start taping it together just to make this a faster process. And most people are going to use scissors. These are my paper scissors, not fabric scissors. Do not do that because you will dull them. But I also have this rotary cutter, and I've changed the blade. So this is an old blade that is too dull, so I'm not using it for cutting fabric. This is my fabric rotary cutter, and this is my paper one, just because I find you can go way faster. That being said, I think most people will not have two rotary cutters and a mat. Most people, if they're just starting, aren't even gonna have any of these. So scissors is what you'll use, but for me, I can just go much faster with this rotary cutter and a ruler. So everyone's pattern will be different, but for me, I like to do 5 pieces of paper across, and then I head to the next row. So every 5, you're going to be going down a row. And now because of that, this is my piece number 6. I'm going to be cutting off the top because I will then be able to attach it on top of this piece number 1. I'm just going to start putting the pieces together, following all the lines, the diamonds, and the half circles. And I'm going from 1 to 5, and then 6 is going to start down here. So also, I like to put my pieces together on a cutting mat or something. I used to do it on the floor, but I would find the papers would slide around easily. So sometimes when you're taping, like up here, it'll slide and then get off center. So try to do it on something where the paper isn't going to slide around a ton. And I also recommend, if you're adding a piece to 2 other sides, try to tape the corner first so that it doesn't slide. So if you do up here, it could, adjust down here. So once your pattern is all put together, I like to cut apart the pieces first because I find it's easier to cut them, and then you're going to want to determine your size and make sure you choose the right size for your own measurements. So all patterns will have a size key. It might be in the pattern in the beginning pages, it might be actually on the pattern. I do both, so here's my size key. And for my pattern, I like to do a different line for each size. So there will be dashes. Other patterns might have different colors for each different size, or they might be all a solid line with the size written beside it. But for this pattern, I find there's just a lot of lines. So I like to do different kinds of lines. I like this over colors because then people don't need to have a color printer and they don't have to print in color to print the pattern. I just prefer to print in black and white. So this way it is easier to identify the different sizes based on the line. Now, if it is still difficult for you, one tip I recommend is you can take a highlighter and go along the pattern all the way around with the highlighter first so that you do not cut out the wrong size or mess up. I don't have a highlighter, so I can't do this right now. If I did have one handy, I would do it, but that's just a tip to make sure that you do not cut out the wrong pieces. So next, you're just going to cut out your pieces for your size. You can do this with scissors like normally, or I'm going to use my rotary cutter again just because I can go much faster with it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like my videos and comment what you want me to do next. Bye.
You say you wanna make it happen.